This year, give your Qurbani with Spot Project and earn immense reward. Choose from our livestock, cows, goats and sheep, so we can provide quality meals to the orphans, the poor and the families in need this Eid. Qurbani with Spot Project.
Assalamu alaikum guys, and welcome to another episode of Smile to Jannah. Gary Lineker has apologized.
I would like once again to say I'm sorry unreservedly.
But the BBC bosses have said his position is and has become untenable.
It's understood that bosses considered his position untenable,
which means unacceptable. On LBC there was a guest that said he needs to keep his mouth shut.
Gary Lineker ought to learn that lesson, just keep his mouth shut.
And called him thick.
Not because he's embarrassing the BBC, because he's embarrassing himself. The guy is really thick.
On Channel 5, he was called a toddler.
Gary Lineker has behaved in the manner of a toddler.
And what he said, damaging.
But he's too damaging to the corporation.
Now, what did Gary Lineker do that was so bad that the media frenzy has turned on him? I mean, he must have done something really significant, right? Well, let's have a look.
Last week I shared a post here on Instagram that contained an emoji that has awful connotations. Unfortunately, I did not see the emoji. If I had, I would never ever have shared it. The minute I was made aware, I quickly deleted the post and went on to make an apology.
All he did was retweet a post about Zionism, and on that post there happened to be an emoji of a rat. And because this rat is considered an anti-Semitic trope, this is where the fervor, the outrage, the anger has come from. Because what he's tweeting about is not being considered here, because currently 53,000 people have been eliminated from Palestine in cold blood. Like a post rightfully said, the outrage is with Gary's post, not with what he's posting about. And that's the reality. The BBC has been meddling with headlines and favouring the position of Israel, the occupier, the genocider, as opposed to the victims and the people undergoing ethnic cleansing and genocide. But is that going to be the one causing outrage? No. There we need to be balanced, you know what I mean?
Is its impartiality, and that is sacrosanct, and that is something which ought to be protected.
Can't be seen as biased. Yet biased against who? Yes, can't be seen as being biased towards the Palestinians. Because that's the reality. The BBC has not been impartial. You had an analysis that was done by Jan Liteva and Dana Najjar. They looked at 600 articles and 4,000 live feed posts between October the 7th, 2023 and December the 2nd, 2023. They concluded whenever Israeli deaths were mentioned, they were mentioned by name. On the other hand, when Palestinian deaths were mentioned, they were just said and mentioned in a group, almost dehumanizing them. Number 2, Palestinian deaths, whenever reported, were justified. Typical words that were used were words to the variation of retaliating, that Israel was just responding. In November 2023, 8 BBC journalists wrote a 2,300 word letter complaining to Al Jazeera about the BBC bias. Rafi Berg, who's a senior BBC editor, in fact, he's the lead in BBC's Middle East desk. He was exposed, and get this, as a CIA and a Mossad collaborator. And as a result, 13 employees said that there was a culture of, and I quote, extreme fear to post anti-Israeli content, and that he has, quote, wild amounts of power at the BBC. Declassified UK revealed that the BBC were amongst those who had a secret meeting with the former chief of staff for Israel's military called Avi Kochavi. I just want to bring your attention to somebody else who was at the BBC, Jeremy Clarkson, who was on a show called Top Gear. When he attacked one of the producers, it took him 21 days to be removed and fired. Although it can be argued that Gary Lineker has left, but the BBC bosses have made it clear that his position there has become untenable, and the constant meetings and the constant lectures and the constant you've done this, you've done that, actually made his position there impractical. So coming back on Jeremy Clarkson, that wasn't the only time. In 2011, he offended the Mexicans to such a degree that the Mexican ambassador had to get involved. In 2010, he offended the disabled communities to such a degree that the BBC Trust said that it had breached their guidelines. In 2014, he offended the Asian and Thai people to such a degree that an Indian actress called Somi Guha considered doing legal action. Again, in 2011, he offended the Indians to such a degree that the Indian High Commission had to lodge a official complaint. And 2005, he offended the Germans by doing Nazi references. All of these you guys saw with receipts. Rather, in those cases, the BBC just apologized and just continued business as normal. And GB News, the upcoming far-right pandering, right-wing supporting drivel of a news channel. These guys normally, when it comes to Quran burning, when it comes to Islamophobia rhetoric, these people employ such people on their channel. They invite them, and whenever people show some sort of disdain towards their Islamophobic rhetoric, you know what they say? They bring up freedom of speech. Now, ladies and gentlemen, there is absolutely no one here mentioning freedom of speech. In fact, let's see the tweet of GB News. Oh, disgraceful, unquestionable. Oh, it's very clear now where you guys are getting your dough from, as if people didn't know that already. And then I want to play this clip in which, look, literally they're going through every single negative word they can come up with in the English language. He has an ego. He wouldn't listen. He was given warnings. He was radicalized. Why? Because the guy holds an opinion.
He just wouldn't listen. He had time and time again an opportunity to rein it in. He was given a couple of warnings. He was getting more and more sort of radicalized almost online.
Yeah, but that's all ego, right? That is pure ego. If he wanted to, he could have had a bit of self-discipline about him and had a bit of perspective, but he didn't, because he thought he was bigger than the BBC.
Why? Because the guy talks about the opinion that he holds. Why? Because the guy is not pandering to the mainstream rhetoric, because he doesn't want to be on the wrong side of history, ladies and gentlemen. I said this before when I did the video on Gary Lineker. I said, kudos to him, much respect to him being somebody in the mainstream. And he has people, I think there's one colleague of his that has said he's been punished. Why? Because not only does he hold this opinion, but he has voiced it in public. Now, unless the British people take back their institutions, their voice from people that are suppressing it, and in this case, we know the Zionists have an extremely strong hold and influence over certain individuals. Let's just keep it at that. And we're seeing it materialize when something gets said against Israelis, Zionists. But when it comes to other minorities, it's freedom of speech. Just move along, man. Stop being a snowflake. Stop getting offended over little things. God's sake, here, you know what they'd be saying if it was someone else? It's just an emoji. It could mean loads of other stuff. What are you gonna do? Start criminalizing emojis? For God's sake, is there no freedom left in the world? What would George Orwell say? We're living in Orwellian times. This is what we'd be hearing. But when it comes to these individuals, no, this is very serious. An emoji? Oh, how dare you? How dare you post this emoji of an animal? I mean, an octopus is anti-Semitic, a rat is anti-Semitic. Flipping heck, there's going to be no emoji left. So I'm just going to leave it there, guys. Hopefully, and most likely, Mr. Lineker will be hired by somebody else because he has been a very famous face when it comes to football, especially here in the UK. So hopefully we see him back on our screens with another channel that can tolerate somebody that is speaking against a genocide. Let's leave it there, guys. Until next time, Assalamu alaikum.